Hello, everyone, and welcome to Global English Talks. My name is Susan, and I am very happy you are here with us today.
And I'm Mark. It's great to spend some time with you. This podcast is a place where you can relax and listen to real conversations in simple English.
Yes, we talk about daily life, personal growth, small habits, and the little questions people often think about but do not always discuss.
Our goal is simple. We want to help you improve your English listening in a natural way. No pressure, no complicated lessons, just friendly conversations.
Imagine you are sitting with two friends in a quiet cafe. You have a warm drink, you are relaxed, and you are simply listening to people talk.
That's the feeling we try to create here on Global English Talks. Easy listening, real ideas, and English that feels natural.
And today, we have a very interesting topic. We are going to talk about something many people notice, but not everyone understands.
Yes, today we are exploring this question. Why do some very smart people stay quiet?
Sometimes the quiet person in the room understands more than everyone else.
And today we will explore that idea together in simple, friendly English.
Mark, can I ask you something funny? Have you ever been in a meeting where one person talks the whole time and the quiet person at the table says almost nothing?
Oh yes, many times. And sometimes the quiet person is the one who actually understands the situation the best.
Exactly. I remember a moment like that a few years ago. I was in a small cafe in the afternoon. Three people at the table were talking very loudly about business ideas. They had big opinions about everything.
I can already imagine that scene. Lots of talking, maybe not a lot of listening.
That's right. But there was another man at the table. He said almost nothing for 20 minutes. He just listened. He watched everyone. He slowly drank his coffee.
Let me guess, when he finally spoke, everyone stopped talking.
Yes, that is exactly what happened. He waited, then he said one short sentence, something simple but very clear, and suddenly the whole conversation changed.
I love moments like that. It feels almost like someone turns on the light in a dark room.
That's a good way to say it. Sometimes people who speak less are actually thinking more.
And it makes you wonder something interesting. Why do some people feel the need to talk all the time, while others prefer to stay quiet and observe?
Yes, is silence a sign of insecurity, or can it be a sign of intelligence?
That question is exactly where our conversation begins today.
Because if you pay attention in daily life, at work, at school, even at family dinners, you often notice something curious.
The person who talks the most is not always the person who understands the most.
And the quiet person in the room may be thinking much deeper than anyone realizes. So today, we want to explore something many people notice but do not always understand. Why do some smart people stay quiet?
Yes, if you watch carefully in daily life, you may see this pattern again and again. In a classroom, in a meeting, or even at a family dinner, there is often one person who listens more than they speak.
And sometimes that quiet person sees the situation very clearly. They notice small details. They hear what people really mean, not only what they say.
Exactly. Talking is easy. Listening carefully is harder. It takes patience and attention.
But here is an important point. Being quiet does not mean someone has no ideas.
Very true. In fact, many thoughtful people prefer to think first and speak later.
They are not trying to be mysterious. They are simply observing the moment before they add their voice.
Today, we will talk about why this happens. We will explore how quiet thinking works and why it can be a powerful habit.
And if you're learning English, this topic is actually very helpful because listening is one of the best ways to improve your language.
Yes, when you listen more, you start to notice rhythm, vocabulary, and how people really communicate.
So if you enjoy calm conversations that help your English grow step by step, this podcast is for you.
And if you like this kind of relaxed learning, you can follow Global English Talks so you never miss a new episode.
Each episode is a chance to practice listening while thinking about real-life ideas.
And today's idea is a fascinating one. The quiet mind is often a very active mind.
Let's explore that together. Mark, before we go deeper, maybe we should explain something in a simple way. When we say smart people stay quiet, what do we really mean?
That's a great place to start. We don't mean that intelligent people never talk. Of course they talk, but many thoughtful people choose their words more carefully.
Yes, instead of speaking quickly, they often pause. They watch the situation first.
Exactly. Imagine you enter a new room where people are already talking. Some people jump into the conversation immediately. They want to be heard right away.
But another person may do something different. They listen for a while. They observe who is speaking, what the topic is, and how people feel.
That person is collecting information, almost like a photographer looking through a camera before pressing the button.
I like that image. The photographer does not just take random pictures. They adjust the angle, the light, and the moment.
Yes, and in the same way, thoughtful people often adjust their thoughts before speaking. They want their words to be clear and useful.
So silence, in this case, is not emptiness. It is actually a moment of thinking.
Right, the brain is still very active. Ideas are moving, questions are forming, and connections are happening.
I remember a teacher I had in university. He once told our class something interesting. He said, "If you understand something deeply, you do not rush to speak. You first make sure your idea is clear."
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes people speak quickly because they want attention, but thoughtful people often speak when they have something meaningful to add.
So when we talk about smart people staying quiet, we are really talking about a habit.
The habit of observing, thinking, and then speaking with intention.
And that small habit can change the entire quality of a conversation. Mark, your explanation about observing before speaking reminds me of a very simple image from everyday life.
Oh, I like where this is going. What kind of image?
Think about a big pot of soup cooking on a stove. Imagine a quiet kitchen in the evening. The soup is slowly heating. You can see small bubbles rising, but it is not boiling loudly.
That's a very calm picture. I can almost smell the soup.
Now, imagine someone who is impatient. They keep opening the lid, stirring too much, adding more ingredients every minute.
That sounds stressful for the soup.
Exactly. When you disturb the pot again and again, the flavors do not have time to mix slowly. The soup may be hot, but the taste is not very deep.
So the best soups usually cook slowly and quietly.
Yes, the ingredients stay together for a long time. The heat works slowly, the flavors become stronger and more balanced.
I see the connection now. Some minds work like that quiet pot of soup.
That's the idea. When someone listens and thinks quietly, their ideas have time to mix and grow stronger.
Instead of throwing words into the conversation every few seconds, they're letting their thoughts cook.
And when they finally speak, their idea often feels clearer, sometimes even surprising.
I remember a moment like that at work. It was late in the afternoon, maybe around 4 o'clock. Our team was discussing a problem for almost an hour.
That must have been a long conversation.
Very long. People were suggesting many solutions, but one colleague stayed silent most of the time. He just listened.
And then?
Near the end of the meeting, he spoke. He explained the problem in 2 simple sentences and suggested one small change.
Let me guess. That solution worked.
It did. Everyone looked at each other like, why didn't we see that before?
Maybe his ideas were cooking quietly while everyone else was stirring the pot too much.
Exactly. Sometimes silence is not empty. It's just the sound of thinking.
So, Mark, if someone listening today wants to become a better thinker and speaker, maybe the first tip is something very simple.
Yes, and it may sound almost too simple. The first tip is learn to pause before you speak.
That small pause can change everything in a conversation.
Exactly. Many people feel a strange pressure to answer immediately. Someone asks a question, and they feel they must respond in 1 second.
I've felt that pressure before, especially in group conversations. There's a moment of silence, and suddenly everyone feels uncomfortable.
Right. Silence can feel strange for some people. They want to fill that space quickly with words.
But a short pause is actually very useful.
Yes, think about what happens in your mind during that pause. Even 2 or 3 seconds gives your brain time to organize ideas.
Instead of speaking the first thought that appears, you can choose the best thought.
I remember a small moment in a bookstore once. It was a quiet afternoon. I asked the employee for a recommendation. I expected a fast answer.
But they didn't answer immediately?
No. He stopped for a moment. He looked at the shelves. He thought for maybe 5 seconds. Then he suggested a book and explained why.
That pause probably made the recommendation better.
Exactly. His answer felt thoughtful. It showed he was really considering the question. So a pause is not weakness. It's actually a sign of care.
Yes, when you pause, you show that your words matter. You are not just reacting, you're thinking.
And for English learners, this is also very helpful.
Definitely. If you're speaking in a second language, a small pause helps your brain find the right words.
So here's a simple habit to practice. When someone asks you something, take one calm breath before answering. That tiny moment can turn a rushed response into a thoughtful one.
Let's talk about a second tip that connects very well with this idea of pausing.
Yes. Tip number 2 is listen for meaning, not just for your turn to speak.
That is a powerful difference. Many people listen, but they are not really listening.
Exactly. Their mind is already preparing the next sentence while the other person is still talking.
I notice this a lot in busy places. For example, once I was in a small restaurant on a Saturday night. The place was loud, people were laughing, and 2 friends at the next table were having a conversation.
Let me guess, one person was talking and the other one was already jumping in.
Yes, the second person interrupted again and again. He was not reacting to the story, he was just waiting for a chance to tell his own story.
That happens often. The conversation becomes more like 2 speeches instead of a real exchange.
Exactly. But listening for meaning is different.
When you listen for meaning, you try to understand the feeling behind the words. You notice tone, pauses, and small details.
Maybe the person is excited, or maybe they are worried.
Right. And when you truly understand what they mean, your response becomes more thoughtful and relevant.
I remember a walk in the park with a friend one evening. The sun was going down, and the park was very quiet. My friend was talking about a difficult decision at work.
That sounds like an important moment.
It was. Instead of giving quick advice, I simply listened. I asked a few questions. Slowly, my friend started understanding the situation better just by explaining it.
Sometimes people don't need immediate answers. They need space to think out loud.
Exactly. And when you listen carefully, you create that space.
This is why many thoughtful people stay quiet during conversations. They're absorbing information.
They're connecting ideas.
And when they finally speak, their words often feel more precise because they truly understood what was happening in the conversation.
Let's move to our third tip, and this one may surprise some people.
Yes, tip number 3 is, not every thought needs to be spoken.
That sounds simple, but it is actually a very powerful habit.
Our minds produce many thoughts every minute. Some are useful, some are emotional, and some are just noise.
But many people feel they must say every thought that appears in their mind.
Exactly. It's almost like their brain is a radio that's always on.
I once saw a moment like this on a train ride. It was early in the morning, maybe around 7. The train was quiet, and most people looked a little sleepy.
That sounds like a peaceful scene.
It was, but 2 passengers behind me were talking loudly. One of them shared every small idea that came into his head, every opinion, every reaction, every small complaint.
That must have been exhausting for the other person.
Yes, After a while, the conversation felt very chaotic. The ideas jumped from one topic to another.
When we speak every thought immediately, the conversation can lose direction.
Exactly. Thoughtful people often do something different.
They filter their thoughts.
They ask themselves a small question before speaking.
Something like, is this helpful? Or does this add something meaningful?
And if the answer is no, they simply let the thought pass.
I like to imagine thoughts as small birds flying across the sky of the mind.
That's a nice image.
You can notice the birds, but you do not need to catch every single one.
Some thoughts deserve attention, others can simply continue flying.
When you practice this habit, your words become fewer but stronger.
And people often listen more carefully when someone speaks with intention.
Because the conversation becomes clearer and more focused.
Let's look at our fourth tip, and this one is very interesting. Tip number 4 is observe the room before joining the conversation.
Yes, this is a skill many thoughtful people use naturally. When they enter a new situation, they do not rush to speak.
They take a moment to read the environment.
Exactly. They notice who is talking, how people are reacting, and what kind of energy is in the room.
I remember a moment at a small birthday dinner a few years ago. It was evening, maybe around 8. The restaurant was warm and a little noisy, and about 10 people were sitting around a long table.
That sounds like a lively group.
It was. People were laughing and sharing stories, but one person who arrived a little later did something interesting.
What did they do?
Instead of immediately jumping into the conversation, she sat down, smiled, and listened for a few minutes.
She was observing the rhythm of the group.
Exactly. She noticed which topics people were enjoying, which people were quieter, and how the conversation was moving.
That kind of observation gives you important information.
Yes, after a few minutes, when she finally joined the conversation, her comments fit perfectly into the moment.
That makes a big difference. When someone understands the flow of the room, their words feel natural.
It is a little like entering a dance floor.
That's a good image.
If you run onto the floor without listening to the music, your movements may feel out of place.
But if you pause and hear the rhythm first, your steps match the music.
In the same way, observing the room helps your words match the moment.
And this is another reason smart people sometimes stay quiet at first.
They are not absent, they are simply learning the rhythm of the conversation before stepping into it. Mark, something interesting happens when people start practicing these habits. They realize that quiet moments are not empty moments.
Yes, that is a very important idea. Many people think silence means nothing is happening.
But often, the opposite is true. A quiet moment can be a moment when the mind is organizing ideas.
I like to think about it like a small workshop late at night. Imagine a wooden table, a soft lamp, and a person building something slowly with their hands.
That's a peaceful image.
Now imagine someone entering that workshop every 2 minutes and asking questions. Are you done yet? Is it finished now?
That would make the work very difficult.
Exactly. Good thinking sometimes needs quiet space, just like careful work needs calm hands.
I remember a Sunday afternoon at home. It was raining outside and the house was very quiet. I was sitting by the window with a notebook.
Were you writing something?
Not really. I was just thinking about a problem I had at work. For a long time, I wrote nothing. I simply watched the rain and let my mind move slowly.
And did something interesting happen?
Yes. After maybe 20 minutes, a clear idea suddenly appeared. Not because I forced it, but because my mind finally had space.
That's a beautiful example. Sometimes the brain needs silence the way the body needs rest.
Exactly. When we sleep, the body repairs itself.
And when we give our mind quiet moments, our thoughts begin to connect in deeper ways.
So being quiet is not laziness.
Not at all. It can be a form of mental rest that prepares us to think better later.
In a world that is always noisy and fast, choosing a quiet moment can actually be a very intelligent habit.
Because some of the best ideas arrive when the mind finally has room to breathe.
Now it's time for our tiny word tour. This is the part where we look at a few useful English words connected to today's topic. Our first word is observe.
Observe means to watch something carefully and pay attention to details. It's stronger than just looking. For example, you might say, I like to observe people in a cafe and notice how they communicate. This word matters because thoughtful people often observe before they speak. They watch the situation and collect information before sharing an idea.
That's a great one. Our second word today is pause.
Pause means to stop for a short time before continuing. It's a small break, not a long stop. For example, someone might say, before answering the question, she paused and thought about the best response. This word is important because a pause gives your brain time to organize your thoughts and choose clearer words.
I like that. The next word is thoughtful.
Thoughtful describes a person who thinks carefully and considers ideas deeply. A thoughtful person does not react too quickly. For example, you might say, he gave a thoughtful answer that helped everyone understand the problem better. This word matters because quiet people are often thoughtful. They prefer to understand a situation fully before speaking.
Our fourth word is reflect.
Reflect means to think carefully about something, often after an experience. It is like looking at an event again in your mind. For example, someone might say, after the meeting, I reflected on what everyone said. This word is useful because reflection helps us learn from conversations and make better decisions in the future.
The next word is intention.
Intention means the purpose behind an action or a decision. It explains why someone does something. For example, you could say, she spoke with clear intention because she wanted to help solve the problem. This word matters because speaking with intention makes your words more meaningful and focused.
And our last word today is insight.
Insight means a deep and clear understanding of something. It often appears after careful thinking or observation. For example, someone might say, his quiet listening gave him insight into the real problem. This word is important because insight often comes from patience, observation, and thoughtful silence.
Mark, I think this is a good moment to invite our listeners to try a small experiment.
I like that idea. A tiny challenge can make the lesson feel real.
Yes, so here is our mini challenge for today. In your next conversation, try to stay a little quieter than usual.
Not silent the whole time, of course, just a little more patient.
Exactly. Imagine you are sitting with a friend, a coworker, or a family member. When the conversation starts, focus first on listening.
Notice the small details. How fast are they speaking? Do they sound excited, worried, or calm?
Pay attention to the words they choose.
And also the pauses between their sentences.
When it is your turn to speak, try something simple. Take one calm breath before answering.
That tiny pause will give your mind time to organize your thoughts.
You may notice something interesting.
Your response might become clearer and more thoughtful.
And sometimes you may realize that you do not need to say as much as you first thought.
Yes, a short sentence can often carry more meaning than a long explanation.
This challenge is not about becoming quiet forever.
Not at all. It is about discovering the power of listening and thoughtful speech.
Think of it like adjusting the volume of your voice in a conversation.
Sometimes the most powerful moment in music is the quiet part.
Exactly. Silence can create space for better ideas.
So today, try this small experiment. Listen carefully, pause briefly, and then speak with intention.
You might be surprised by how the conversation changes. If you enjoyed that mini challenge, we can make it even easier with a few simple daily actions.
Yes, small habits practiced every day can slowly change how we communicate.
The first step is very simple. During one conversation today, focus completely on listening.
That means no phone in your hand, no thinking about the next thing you want to say, just listen to the other person.
Notice their words, but also their tone and their expressions.
You may discover that people often say more than we realize when we truly pay attention.
The second step is to practice the small pause we talked about earlier.
When someone asks you a question, do not rush. Take one quiet breath before you answer.
That breath is like pressing a small, organized button in your mind.
It helps your thoughts line up before your words come out.
The third step is something you can do even when you're alone.
At the end of the day, take 2 minutes to reflect on one conversation you had.
Ask yourself a few simple questions. Did I listen carefully? Did I rush to speak? Could I have expressed my idea more clearly?
This small reflection helps your brain learn from real experiences.
And the fourth step is about curiosity.
The next time you meet someone who is very quiet in a group, try not to assume they have nothing to say.
Instead, gently invite them into the conversation.
You could ask something simple like, "What do you think about this?"
Sometimes the quietest person at the table has the most interesting idea.
These 4 small actions may seem simple, but they can slowly transform the way you listen, think, and speak.
And over time, conversations can become calmer, clearer, and much more meaningful. Before we finish today's episode, let's take a moment to remember the main ideas we explored together.
Yes, today we talked about a question many people notice in daily life. Why do some smart people stay quiet?
We learned that silence doesn't always mean someone has no ideas.
In many cases, it means the person is observing, thinking, and understanding the situation more deeply.
We also talked about the value of a small pause before speaking.
That pause gives the mind time to organize thoughts and choose better words.
Another important idea was listening for meaning.
Instead of waiting for our turn to speak, we can listen carefully and understand what the other person truly wants to express.
We also explored the habit of filtering our thoughts.
Not every idea that appears in the mind needs to become a sentence.
And we learned that observing the room before speaking can help our words match the moment.
Just like listening to the rhythm of music before stepping onto the dance floor.
We also remembered something important about quiet time.
Silence is not wasted time. It can be the moment when ideas slowly come together.
Then we explored some helpful words like observe, pause, thoughtful, reflect, intention, and insight.
And finally, we invited you to try a small challenge. Listen a little more, pause briefly, and speak with intention.
Sometimes the calmest voice in the room carries the clearest message.
And sometimes the quiet mind is the one that sees the most.
And that brings us to the end of today's conversation on Global English Talks.
We hope this episode helped you relax, think a little deeper, and practice listening to natural English at the same time.
Remember, improving your English doesn't always require complicated study.
Sometimes it simply starts with listening to real conversations and allowing your brain to absorb the rhythm of the language.
And today, we also discovered something interesting about communication itself.
Yes, speaking is important, but listening carefully can be just as powerful.
When you pause, observe, and speak with intention, your words often become clearer and more meaningful.
So this week, try our small experiment. Listen a little more, rush a little less, and give your thoughts time to grow.
You may notice that your conversations become calmer and more thoughtful.
And your English will naturally improve along the way.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow Global English Talks so you never miss a new conversation.
And if you know someone who is learning English, feel free to share this podcast with them.
Thank you for spending this time with us.
We're always happy to have you here.
Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing.
See you in the next episode.